Wow, wow, wow. Stick around to the end of this episode where Kate from Nontoxic Nonprofits spills the tea and tells us all the biggest secret of her career.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Welcome back to Season 4, Episode 2 of Clicks and Bricks Podcast. Today, I'm talking with Kate Viana of Viana Communications. Really interesting stuff. I've been talking backstage for a little bit, and I'm super excited to introduce you to Kate. Kate, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. Before we jump in and get into the deeper questions, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and give your 50,000 foot view of what is Viana Communications?
Wow. Okay. Well, Viana Communications is the product of my career in the nonprofit world, which spans coming up on 15 years. It is a response to the recurring internal communications and cultural issues that I saw at every nonprofit I worked at, was on the board of, volunteered with. It didn't matter. Whatever the mission, the same issues kept cropping up. So Viana Communications exists to solve those problems.
Communication is such, it's the keynote to success is the old saying, and it is such a challenge. And I think as we grow and we become business leaders, we understand how challenging it really is. And having different modalities for different people and talking different, communicating differently for different people is really, really important. And you chose to go into the nonprofit. Can you tell us a little bit about why you think that was a good idea? I've got a ton of ideas of why niching down is a good idea, but can you tell us just a little bit about the natural journey of what landed you in the nonprofit communication business?
Yeah, I have always had sort of a deep-seated, almost pathological need to give and serve. I've been part of animal welfare almost all my life. We have 12 animals right now. So I've always wanted to give back, to serve something much greater than myself and leave a really positive impact on the world. And I've always been quite a gifted writer. So the two just kind of naturally came together after grad school. The job market was not that great. So I could find work in the nonprofit world while also serving that need to give and serve something, like I said, greater than myself.
Awesome. It is coming from internal out is the way to go, right?
Yeah.
It is it's a different way to run a business than I'm doing this because I want to and I'm passionate about it, other than got to pay the mortgage on Friday. It changes almost everything about your business. So very, very cool. Before we jumped into the show, we talked a little bit about Viana Communications. You had told me very similar to my business. It's kind of a holding company and there's multiple brands underneath it. And I know that can get confusing from time to time, especially when you're talking to different people and you go to an expo and today you're representing this brand, but tomorrow you might be representing this brand. And I'm curious because I do the same thing. And I think that this is going to be way more popular as AI and robotics kind of come into the future, that a single solopreneur can run multiple brands. They can have, I've got my business brand and my comedy brand and my boxing. I've got all these different brands that I manage for me. Can you tell the audience a little bit first? Let's just go over your brand structure really quick and kind of just hit each one of them. But Then I'd like to talk about some of the benefits and maybe some of the pitfalls of having multiple brands, because I think it's an interesting conversation to have. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there or solopreneurs that are coming into the same kind of world.
Yeah. Well, Viana Communications is a 4-brand ecosystem, and it's really geared towards serving nonprofits at every stage of their growth. Just like you have solopreneurs, you have people out there starting businesses in their garage, or in my case, my home office. You have nonprofits who are doing the same thing. You have people who are housing, homeless dogs in their basement. You have people who are running women's shelters out of their garage. I mean, you have all these people who are trying to do things by themselves or with a partner or a friend. You have that level where they don't have a brick and mortar business. They don't have much in the way of communications infrastructure or anything like that. And you also have the big companies. The big nonprofits of the world, like United Way, Habitat, the ones that everyone knows. We don't serve the big guys. We serve the little tiny guys and the mid-sized guys, because those are the ones that are really going to make the most difference and impact locally. And that's where we're trying to make the biggest difference. So we start kind of at the bottom. I don't want to say the bottom, but the Our sort of simplest brand is nonprofit text, and those are AI-powered communications templates that cover everything from fundraising to event communications to volunteer recruitment and retention. They were edited by myself and my partner, who is an operations professional coming up on 12 years now. And those are just turnkey, awesome for those really small shops that just need something to get them started. They don't have time to sit down and write a million emails a day. Above that, we have Viana Social, which is actually the first Viana Communications brand. I started Viana Social, I think 7 years ago now. And I did it back then. I just noticed that I was good at social media, and I had a bunch of contacts in the nonprofit world that needed social media help and didn't know what to do. So I said, well, gosh, I can do this. I have a full-time job. I'm good at it. Let me just throw out some affordable options. So that is social media marketing, that's fundraising, that's email marketing, all that stuff. Next up, you have Nontoxic Nonprofits, which is kind of my baby. It's my favorite brand, and that exists to deal specifically with cultural issues in nonprofits. I tell people that culture is the most accurate predictor of a nonprofit's long-term sustainability, and so we help out with that. And at the top of the funnel, sort of, is Upscale. And Upscale works with nonprofits who are already doing really well. The culture is good. Things are pretty solid, but they need help tightening up their communications infrastructure and that operations piece of things.
Awesome. That's a whole suite of tools. I love how you've put each one of them in a bucket. I just want to talk on some of the key points that I've noticed right out of the gate. And if you're starting a pet business or you're thinking about creating a new product line, something that you did was you narrowed your focus down to a very specific product set for a very specific niche. One reason why a lot of entrepreneurs do that is because having a low ticket item and a high ticket item on the same brand can create brand confusion. It's like, What is this? Is this? And then it's also a lot easier to just market a URL with a product. There's a ton of reasons why you would do that. There's a ton of reasons why you wouldn't do that too, because it creates confusion. And when you're at the executive level, it's kind of sometimes long-winded to say what you do, right? You've got all these different paths and you have these different things. So really, really exciting. Can you tell us, maybe what are obvious benefits? I think anybody that's got some very basic marketing intelligence is going to know, I see why you would have a low ticket item on its own brand and hit that very specific target. Can you tell us maybe some of the pitfalls or some of the challenges you've had with that kind of structure?
Well, it's not cheap. I will say it is not cheap to get 4 brands up and running. So there's that right off the bat. I think because they have similarities. They all deal with communications in one way or another. And I think a challenge that we have run into, not super often, but enough to mention, is differentiating each brand. So it's quite easy to tell what nonprofit text is, right? You can say, that's a template that you download. That's easily distinguishable. But then when it comes to, like, for example, the difference between non-toxic nonprofits and Upscale, we have had to stop and say, okay, what does each brand actually do? Because we want to draw lines here. We don't want bleed over into the other brands. We want to say, we will grow with you every step of the way, but this is where this brand starts and this is where this brand, begins. So you understand how you're kind of progressing through the cycle of brands, basically.
Awesome. I love it. I like how you have definite synergies and almost a pathway through your brands.
It is a pathway. It's definitely intended to be one, for sure.
Yeah, I really like that. It's a fun way to think about it. And it's almost like Viana Communications is, the holding company, and then there's these path of services, but each service you've branded as its own brand, which I think is smart and clever. Challenging for sure. Having 4 different websites and 4 different social media profiles and all those things is extra challenging. But if you make sure that one car is on the track and moving, then you can kind of get the next one up and running. And that's really cool. I want to take a different path completely now, Kate. I want to talk about your toxic workforce. What was the name of it? Sorry.
Non-toxic nonprofits.
Non-toxic nonprofits. And you said cultural identity is
culture. Yeah. Culture is the most accurate predictor of long-term sustainability.
Yeah. And I've been across the board, right? I've been in companies. When I was a kid, I worked for corporate America, hundreds of, thousands of employees, companies. And then since then, I've had up to 700 employees working for me, companies with 2 people, all over the board. And I couldn't agree with you more that culture is the defining factor for all businesses. I would say not even just nonprofit. And it's really hard to see, especially when you're on the inside.
Yes, it
Uh,
is.
I know, and you really have to step out and do that and look back at it. What are some of the signs that if you're, and this show's not for management, it's for the entrepreneur and solopreneur.
Mhm.
But if you are in management and you're noticing some toxicity inside, the even a new employee with just a little bit of pushback,
Mhm.
what do you do in that kind of scenario? Do you cut ties quick, or do how does a manager know when it's time to cut ties or nurture that employee?
Well, I don't know if I would approach it that way, because here's the thing. Leaders, whether they're, a middle manager or they're the CEO or whatever, leaders are the cultural custodians wherever they are. So, leaders tend to hire what they like to see in people, right? So, if you made the hire, if you personally made the hire, then you must have seen in that person something that you valued in the workplace. If one of your direct reports makes a hire and it turns out that you don't really like them, it's very possible, and I would say even probable in a lot of cases, that you're modeling leadership behaviors that are leading them to hire certain types of people, if that makes sense.
So you
So
should look at that in the hiring process.
you should look at the hiring process. You should also look at management styles. Part of what I do is telling executive directors, I have bad news, you're the problem. But they are. If your culture is bad, it's your fault, because the culture starts at the top and it trickles down. That's actually one thing that does trickle down, is culture from the top. And so if you are ending up with hires that you feel are toxic, then something is going on with leadership to sort of lead managers to value the traits that they're hiring for, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, it does totally. And it's such a double-edged sword because, a good sales department typically is toxic. Like a high performing, it's just been my experience, and I see it less and less today.
yeah.
But a high performing sales department that I've seen in my life, the
Hmm.
majority of the time, because of the nature of the job and how aggressive that it is,
Yeah.
and it's always eat your kill, that tends to become a little bit toxic in my opinion. And it's really challenging whenever you have when you're trying to grow a business. Startup communities typically get a little toxic because we live together for days on end sometimes, right? When we're launching a new startup and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. And I think that is sort of what we were talking about at the beginning. That's the reason that I like to work with nonprofits, because although I don't really agree with it, it's not really my cup of tea. I understand that startups and for-profit businesses are obviously in business for profit. Money has to be number one. The bottom line has to come before everything else. And that's not really how I roll. I mean, I think that's kind of a boring way to do life, is just the money, 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 money. But I understand that that's the nature of the for-profit world. I
Yeah.
focus on nonprofits because obviously revenue is very important. You have to have it to carry out your programming and hire people and things like that. But the top priority is service delivery. It's mission fulfillment. And to me, that is a lot more interesting. And you certainly cannot afford to have a toxic culture in a place where people are not there for the money because they'll just leave.
Right. I absolutely love it. And folks, I want to just take a second and think about what Kate just said in reality. She knows herself enough that if she goes and works for a big for-profit or startup, that's not going to be for her. So she decided to start a company that she could work with the kind of people that melded with her. And that's the kind of world that we're going into in 2025 and 26 with AI and robotics. That realistically, if you're not about just, hey, let's make as much money as possible, and you want to have a happy, healthy life and service people and hopefully make a great living doing it, uh, the doors are open for anybody to walk into and
Yeah.
start servicing whatever kind of person or kind of client that they want, right? If you're a broski and you like that toxic rah hustle, go for it, right? And go find that community and service those people. But if you're, a little bit more relaxed and just want to live life and only work with the people you love working with, there's plenty of room to do that now.
Yeah, totally.
You don't have to
Yeah.
put yourself in a basket of eggs that are different than you any longer,
No. I mean,
unless
I
you want
think
to, and that's fun too.
Yeah, I think a big part of the reason that it took me some years to arrive at my ultimate vision, which I've already shared with you here, is because you see a lot of stuff outside of yourself that makes you think, I don't know, like, am I thinking about this wrong? Like, am I approaching this incorrectly somehow? But then I think what makes a successful entrepreneur is your ability to, or your willingness, I guess, to listen to and heed your own vision. So, I mean, because what you pull out of yourself is going to make sense to you and maybe your mom, I guess, but like not a lot of other people are going to understand right away. But if you pull it out of yourself and you're true to it, it will grow to be something that you love. I firmly believe that.
All right, Kate, I love the banter section of Clicks and Bricks, and it's been great getting to know you a little bit. I'm going to dump into a little bit deeper questions for you. On the Snapcast podcast, you talked about 6 common communication problems in organizations. Which one do you see the most, and what's one way you help leaders solve it?
My gosh, that was a while ago. So I don't remember what 6 problems I listed.
Okay. What is the big problem? If you don't remember the 6, what is the biggest problem that you see today in the communication problems in organizations?
I will tell you that lately, the last 2 years, I am training almost nonstop on intergenerational communication in nonprofits. That is a huge, huge issue. And it's because we have 5 generations in the workplace for the first time ever. We've got Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, boomers, and the silent generation. And I mean, they're transitioning out of the workforce, but that there's such a massive cross-section of lived experience, culture, understanding of technology. I mean, across the board, it's so crazy. There's so much difference. That is what people are struggling with the most lately.
Yeah. There's a funny thing. My wife and I, we use Monday, Friday a lot when we're talking. And if you say, hey, we have a meeting on Wednesday, let's push that back 2 days. Is that Monday or Friday? For me, that's always Friday. And for my wife, it's always Monday. And when we're having this conversation about, I can tell that like, oh, the words that I'm saying and my intention, she's hearing something different. Right. And it's that reminder of, hey, you hear Mondays and I hear Fridays, and that's okay. And breaking that down into different modalities is phenomenal. For me, AI has helped in that world more than anything I've ever seen in my life, of being able to say, hey, here's my intended output or my intention. Can you phrase this for 5 different people of different education levels and give me an image and stuff like that? How is AI kind of shaping your world in there? And that's not one of these questions, but we'll get back to that.
I have not really used AI much in my culture work, particularly. And I think it's because AI has its uses. Obviously, I use it. But for me, that takes the human element out of it a little too much for me.
Okay.
I try to teach, because you can't do that as a leader, right? I mean, you can't always go to your computer, pull up ChatGPT and say, write 3 or 4 different versions of this so that I can send it out to staff. You're dealing, especially with these smaller nonprofits, you're dealing with a staff of, maybe departments have 3 or 4 people in them. Maybe the whole organization only has 10 or 15. You leaders need to be equipped to speak to individuals and listen to individuals and have a sincere appreciation for each of their cultural and generational lenses. That is the way that you're going to become the most successful communicator and have the healthiest possible culture.
I agree with you 100%. That's really challenging for a leader to do, especially as they grow fast. It's a lot to ask of any human to be able to switch gears to multiple modalities very, very quickly. I think if you're when you get over 20 employees, it gets really hard.
That's true. And I think that, and I totally agree with that and acknowledge it. And I think that's where what I was saying earlier comes in. You are the executive director. Say you have 25, 50 people under you, it's your job to model the behaviors you want to see at the top and enforce those behaviors with your executive leadership team, for example. Yes. So you model it with your VPs and your senior directors, and the senior directors take it back to the managers, and the managers take it to the frontline staff. So it's being reinforced at every level that we listen with respect, that we lead with curiosity rather than hostility, for example.
I have a company that every single day we start and we read our core values.
Yeah.
Loud and proud. And we talk about them every single day. And I'll tell you what, it is probably the most healthy environment that I've ever created in my entire life. And as I start new companies, having core values and mantras will be part of it. And the staff will embrace it, or they won't be part of the staff. And that's okay.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, having core values or a mission statement or something that you read every day, it becomes part of who you are. It becomes part of who your staff is. That repetition is wildly beneficial. And I know it's cheesy, and I know we all hate doing it, but it is wildly powerful. I'm going to go on to the next. On the Founders Fortune podcast, you mentioned moving from quick culture checkups to longer programs under your brand, Viana Communications. What made you decide to make that change, and how did you keep the same quality while growing?
Well, we still offer both of those things at Nontoxics. I mean, we offer the culture checkup, which is a pretty low level investment at like $4.95 or something like that, and that's intended to make the services accessible to those smaller nonprofits with the smaller budgets, because it's not a lot of money, but it is significant for them, and it gives them a little taste of maybe what the issue is, because we just administer a survey, we analyze the results, and we give them customized recommendations for what might be tripping them up. So that's just to make it accessible for smaller nonprofits. It's also a way for us to get our foot in the door with nonprofits that do have larger budgets and they're not quite sure, because you will not be surprised to hear many executive directors are skeptical of investing in their culture when there are so many other things that they need to be doing. IT, HR, all of it.
Culture is so important, and we don't talk about it nearly enough. The damage that a single rogue employee can cause that's not 100% on board, sitting in a cubicle over there, doesn't matter if they do a lot of work or they're a great performer.
Right.
If they don't match the culture, it's cancerous inside your company. I've seen it, and it's horrible. And I've seen it primarily with high performers, actually, that they're really, really high performers. I've probably been toxic this way myself. Like, find somebody else that can do what I can do over here. So you're going to deal with my toxicity on this other side. And it's not a healthy way to be, but it happens a lot.
It does happen a lot. I think, that's one of the things that I love about training on intergenerational communication is seeing how Generation Z is going to be shifting the workplace. I mean, for-profit and nonprofit, they are shifting things toward money is less important. They want to work somewhere that they believe in, where they think the work is worth doing. They feel good about coming into work or working from home, as the case may be. And they like where they are. So, and they're going to prioritize their mental health. They're going to prioritize how they feel when they log off at the end of the day. Because, that I feel like with our parents and stuff, well, my parents were baby boomers, and their attitude was, you just work, you grin and bear it, you get through it, do the best you can. And then you come home and, you try to forget about it. But that's not what the up and coming generations want. They don't want to feel like crap at work and get their only reprieve.
They listened to us finally. They finally started listening to us, and now we have to eat our own dog food because we've been telling them to do what they love, and you'll never work another day in your life for our whole lives. And this is a generation that's actually embracing that. And I think it's exciting. I think it's
very exciting.
I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah.
We're going to see a lot of old school structure fall that probably should have fallen a long time ago.
Definitely.
And that's okay. And I think I'm super excited about the future. I understand. I dive deep into AI and stuff, and I understand we're going to have a bumpy road ahead of us. But on the other side of that road, I think is a pretty wild, fun existence on this planet. So
totally, yeah.
I'm super excited about how fast things are moving. I wish our governments could keep up, but I doubt they will be able to. Your Atlanta social media service for nonprofits and small businesses is built around being flexible, easy to work with, and even using humor. How do those things help your clients get results?
So I come at all marketing work that I do from a place of making the client or the mission, what's the word I'm looking for? We'll just go with mission for right now, making it relatable. Because if something is relatable, people want to be part of it. They want to say, oh yeah, that's me. I get that totally 100%. But some things are not fun to relate to. For example, I have had a couple of clients who dealt with very serious and not funny things like cancer. Right? Cancer is not funny. If you ask 100 people, you'll get 100. No, that's not funny at all. But the thing is, in marketing, you need to engage people in a way that doesn't depress them. You need to make them not only see themselves potentially in the mission or the service the population that you're serving, but you also need to make them see it as a space where it's okay to be lighthearted. It's okay to enjoy yourself. I had a lot of fun working with Colon Cancer Foundation because, I mean, if you know where the colon is, there's a lot of, butt jokes that you can make. And I really leaned into that because it's like cancer is this terrible thing, right? But it's also, you don't want to put people in a state of doom and gloom all the time. You have to make it relatable. You have to make it okay to be yourself and maybe even laugh to get people on board. And so that's what Viana Social's media does. Sorry, that's what Viana Social Media's marketing does. We try to reach out to the people that are the target population, whether they're cancer patients or they're uninsured persons or unhoused persons, and or they want to support that mission. And we say, look, we're not just out here being inspirational. We're real here. We know who we're dealing with. We know what they're dealing with, and we're just humans here. We want to help. So that relatability and the humor goes a long way in humanizing things that can be very, very scary and unsettling.
Absolutely. And humor and comedy is so important, especially when you're sick.
Yes.
I've seen it. I see it firsthand on a regular basis. I've been doing a lot of comedy myself lately and seeing people that are sick. And when you can get them to laugh and just open up their hearts a little bit, it's wildly rewarding. So yeah, it's good work that you're doing.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing it. What's the next big change you see coming in how nonprofits work and communicate? Is there something you think all organizations, nonprofits or for-profits should start paying attention to now besides AI? Unless it's something specific with AI.
Well, I think AI is your specialty. That's not mine. I think the intergenerational stuff is going to be a really big deal. It's not just that there are so many different generations in the workplace now, and they all need to learn how to work together harmoniously and effectively. I think it's just they need to be attentive to those tensions because ultimately, I mean, whether you are, someone who wants to hold on to older institutions and ways of doing things or not, they're going to crumble, as you said. As younger generations get older, they start taking those leadership positions and the decision-making positions, things are going to change. So it's just unhealthy and unwise to dismiss the up-and-coming professionals in your organizations. You need to learn what they value. You need to learn how to talk to them so you can set your organization up for long-term success because you want them to stick around and bring their know-how, bring their expertise. You want them to keep it there with you in your organization and not go somewhere that's going to more highly value what they have to offer.
That reminds me of a meme that I used to see a lot back when the internet was growing really big. And it was a guy who's like, what if we train them really good and they go to our competition? And he goes, what if we don't train them and they stay?
Yeah.
That'd be horrible, right?
Exactly.
So having competent workforce, and now it's your job to keep them there. And I think what I'm hearing is that if you have a good culture, and I'm trying to take my CEO hat off. If you have a good culture, then it's not that you can pay less, but you'll have people longer.
Yes, that's true. You will have people longer. And I think also what we're seeing, and this is not at all exclusive to the nonprofit world. I mean, look around. Wages have been stagnant for a while. People want a reason to keep hacking away at, decades of work.
Right.
No one's guaranteed retirement anymore. Generation Z is actually the first generation to say, not like, why should I work a job I hate? They're the first to say, why should I work? Like, what is a job giving me other than a paycheck? Because that's not really worth it because the paycheck's not paying for anything.
Right.
The paycheck's not paychecking, as they say. So, that's going to be a major shift. It is about wages. We all need money to live and to work. But as money honestly becomes less and less powerful, unless we see a pretty significant, turnaround, it's going to be harder to carry on the way things have always been.
Money's going to change on our world
Totally
drastically over the next 10 years. And I'm not an economist, and I try to picture this tokenized economy world that we're moving to. And I don't think I like it. I don't necessarily I don't like every single thing that I do to be a transaction in life. It makes the world seem a little less fun to live in. But yeah. I feel like that's where we're going, though. I think everything's going to be tokenized, and it's sad.
Yeah, I don't think
it's exciting too, but
yeah,
the economy is going to be really wild. Moving on, Kate, you help nonprofits fix workplace problems. What made you go from being a volunteer and a board member to being a founder?
Well, I've always had a very, very broad entrepreneurial streak. I have been starting businesses my whole life, even when I was a kid. Didn't go very far, but I was doing it nonetheless. But I'm going to be honest with you and your listeners. The reason that I went through all those different roles and finally became a founder is because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. That's the honest truth. I have been fired more times than I can count because I was just not able to be quiet. And I'm not, I haven't been forcing my opinions on people, but I can't not speak up when something is objectively wrong and bad. So, I have tried to fix things from the inside, but you're very limited. You're limited for a number of reasons, not the least of which is someone above you can say, well, you no longer have a job. Whereas nowadays, someone can, end their contract with me, and that's fine. I'll carry on to another client. But I became a founder doing what I do because I need to have power is not a great word, but I feel like I need to have the power to influence positive change meaningfully in these organizations.
Absolutely. Just this week, and my career trajectory is changing at breakneck speeds at the moment because the thing that I do for a living is data center operator. And that's one of the most sought after careers on the planet right now is people that know how to build and do data centers. And I'm in a position to where if they're not doing ethically and morally for the planet, that I get to say, no, I'm not going to help you build that because I think it's wrong.
That's amazing.
And I get to tell them that with full confidence that, the way that we've been running data centers in the past is wrong. And I've got a different way to doing it. And that is wildly powerful. And it helps your soul in a way.
Right?
That
it feels
that I
good.
never knew was possible. So I think more people should know that, and that, carving their own path and being able to stand for their own convictions, it helps you so much. And if you're sitting there and you've got a churning feeling in your stomach and you're doing things every day that you don't necessarily agree with, maybe it's time for you to start your own business.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And if you want to do that, InLink is here to help you. InLink.com. So anyway, Kate, I've had such a good time talking with you. And my favorite podcast is The Diary of a CEO. And at the end of every episode, he asks his audience to leave a question for the next guest. And I'm stealing that concept, not stealing the concept from him, but he sells this deck of cards. And I have no idea what this question is, and they're generally pretty impactful. Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. This question comes from Gary Neville. Tell me something you have never told anyone before. I tried to warn you.
Something that I've never told anyone before. That is a really big question. I guess I haven't quite not told anyone this before, but I've only told one person. And that is the insane amount of self-doubt that you still have, even when you're totally convinced that what you're doing is correct. That is so hard to deal with. So for any entrepreneurs or, just getting started entrepreneurs listening, you will feel like, what am I doing? This is insane. I'm doing it wrong. Other people are doing it better. You do it your way. Even when you have days where you're like, you're doubting yourself, you have a terrible case of imposter syndrome, do it your way because no one else on earth can do it your way. That's what makes it right.
Kate, thank you so much for saying that. And I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't go away. I'm an old man and I've been doing this for a long time. And there's still days that you doubt yourself. You get better at sitting in that feeling, understanding what your original plight was and your why and why you're doing the things that you're doing and the work that you love. And when you fall in love with the daily grind, then everything else just kind of falls into place. It's a real thing though. And I promise you, I have the fortune to deal with some of the richest people on the planet, and they all have the same problems, right? Everybody has that moment of doubt in their head. And the trick is to set that doubt to the side, reimagine how you're going to be successful, and just move forward anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And surround yourself with people who want to see you succeed. So
absolutely.
Yes.
Kate, if somebody wanted to work with you and they're watching the show, if they wanted to reach out to you on the business side, how would they get in contact with you, and how would somebody start the process of getting their nonprofit and fixing their internal culture and communications?
Yeah, it's super easy to get in touch with me. It's just kate@nontoxicnonprofits.com. And then the website is in the email address, nontoxicnonprofits.com. You can send us an email and we'll get right back to you.
Awesome. Kate, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything you would like to leave the audience with today?
I don't have any like final amazing words of wisdom. It's been great to be on here. I love talking about my stuff and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, that question was a banger.
It was. It definitely was. Tell me your deepest, darkest secret.
You don't have anything left after that one. Kate, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. It's important stuff. I hope you have a great life.
Thank you. You too.